My daughter stood on that wedding stage, her voice steady, eyes cold. "You're not my real dad," she said, into a microphone before 300 people who turned to look at me. I did not move. My hands were still holding the bouquet I had bought her that morning. The same lilies her mother once loved. The hall went silent. Cameras flashed. I saw her groom glance at me, then away, as if ashamed for her. I had raised that girl since she was 2. But that night she buried 24 years of my love with a single sentence. And yet, she had no idea what I had prepared for that day. This isn't just a story, it's a truth buried in too many homes. If you're ready to face it, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Mornings at my house used to begin the same way. The sound of the wind brushing against the maple trees, the smell of fresh coffee, and the soft ticking of an old silver watch on the counter. That watch once belonged to my late wife, and every morning I wound it gently the way she used to. It was not just a habit, it was a promise, to keep time moving even when the heart wanted to stop. That was before the wedding, before everything changed. Back then my days were simple. I would fix the old fence that Lily used to lean on as a child. The board still carried faint marks from her chalk drawings, crooked hearts, stick figures, and once the word Dad written in big, uneven letters. I remember smiling when I saw it the first time. She was only 4 and that word had cost her courage. It had also healed something in me I did not know was broken. Lily came into my life when she was 2. Her mother, Emily, was a widow when we met, gentle and kind, with the quiet strength of someone who had survived more storms than she deserved. When we married, Lily stood beside her in a tiny white dress, holding a bouquet almost too big for her hands. I still remember the way she looked at me, cautious, studying me like a stranger, trying to decide if I was safe. Over the years, that look turned into trust. Then love. I raised her like my own blood. School mornings, scraped knees, piano recitals. I never missed one. I was there for every birthday candle, every fever, every tear. And for years I believed that love was enough to make us family. When Emily passed away 5 years ago, the house fell quiet. It was just Lily and me. I thought her grief would draw her closer, but it pushed her into a world I could no longer reach. She went off to college, met new people, and started introducing me to others as her stepdad. It never stopped me from caring. I told myself it was her way of managing pain. When she got engaged last spring, I felt proud and afraid. Proud that she had built a life. Afraid that she was leaving me behind for good. Still, I wanted the best for her. I offered to pay for the wedding, though she said her fiancé's family could handle it. I insisted. "It's your day," I told her. "It should start clean." She smiled politely, but her eyes drifted elsewhere, as if she were already living in another world. The weeks before the wedding were filled with lists and laughter, but not from her. The phone calls were short, her tone careful. I noticed she started calling me John again in front of others. Small things maybe, but small things break hearts too. One evening I stopped by her house to drop off some photo albums for the slideshow. She barely opened the door. "Thanks," she said, taking them quickly. "We're kind of busy right now." Behind her I saw her fiancé's mother arranging flowers. She gave me a polite smile that felt colder than winter air. I tried not to take it personally. Back home I sat at the kitchen table and wound the silver watch again. The ticking filled the silence, slow and steady, like it had something to say. I looked at the small engraving on its back, E and J, always on time. Emily had it carved for our 10th anniversary. I wondered if she could see us now, if she would understand the quiet distance that had grown between her daughter and me. Still, I told myself it was only wedding nerves. Every bride gets overwhelmed. Every father feels forgotten. That is the bargain of love, to give without expecting return. The night before the rehearsal, I placed the watch in my jacket pocket. It was my way of keeping Emily close. I told myself, tomorrow will be beautiful. She will smile and everything will feel right again. But as I stared at the half-empty kitchen, the ticking of the watch grew louder, echoing against the walls like a warning I refused to hear. And deep down, I knew something in her eyes had changed, something that no wedding vow could fix. That week she barely looked at me, and I could not tell why. The morning of the rehearsal began with sunlight spilling through my blinds, golden and calm, the kind of light that makes you believe everything will be all right. I brewed coffee, polished my shoes, and slipped Emily's silver watch into my pocket. The ticking steadied my nerves. Weddings are supposed to be about beginnings, not endings. I told myself that as I drove to the church. When I arrived, the place buzzed with voices and laughter. White ribbons lined the pews, and someone played soft music through a small speaker near the altar. Lily stood by the front row, radiant in a pale blue dress, clipboard in hand. For a moment, I saw the little girl who once held my finger crossing the street. My throat tightened. She turned and smiled, and brief, polite. "Oh, hey, John," she said. John. It was the first time she had said my name that way in months. Cold, casual, like I was a guest, not family. Before I could respond, her fiancé's mother approached, elegant and sharp-eyed. She extended her hand with a tone that felt rehearsed. "You must be Lily's stepfather," she said, each syllable neat as porcelain. I smiled, though something in my chest cracked. "Yes, ma'am. I raised her since she was 2. Her brows lifted slightly, a gesture halfway between surprise and judgment. "How wonderful," she said, turning to adjust the flowers. "It is nice of you to still be involved." Still be involved. The words lingered like smoke. I looked at Lily, waiting, hoping she would say something, anything to bridge the silence. But she did not. She just stared down at her phone, pretending to scroll. The air between us grew heavy, too polite to break. Rehearsal began. The coordinator called out instructions, while couples practiced their steps. I stood by the aisle, hands folded behind my back, waiting for the moment when fathers were asked to walk their daughters toward the altar. That moment never came. Instead, the coordinator announced, "Since Lily's biological father cannot attend, she will walk alone to symbolize independence." My breath caught. I turned to her. "Lily?" She looked away. "It's just tradition, John. It is not a big deal." But it was. Everyone turned their eyes to me, some with pity, others with curiosity. I felt the ground beneath me shift, though I managed to nod. "All right," I said softly. "If that is what you want." Her fiancé tried to speak, but Lily touched his arm, stopping him. I understood then that this decision was hers, not anyone else's. After rehearsal, the guests began leaving, laughter echoing through the church hallway. I stayed behind, pretending to check my coat pocket just to give myself something to do. She approached quietly. "Hey," she said without looking at me. "Thanks for understanding. It's just easier this way." "Easier for who?" I asked. "For everyone," she said, her voice fading. "You know how people talk. I just do not want confusion." Confusion. That word hurt more than the silence before it. I nodded, swallowing whatever pride was left. "It's fine," I said. "Names do not prove love." She smiled faintly. "You have always been understanding." When she walked away, I watched her shoulders stiffen, a small tremor of guilt, maybe. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering a few petals across the church steps. I reached into my pocket and felt the silver watch ticking against my palm. The rhythm was steady, but my heartbeat was not. I sat in my truck for a long time after that, staring at the church through the windshield. People came and went, waving, chatting, laughing. I thought about Emily, about how she used to say that love is a verb, not a title. I had believed that for 24 years, but sitting there, invisible in plain sight, I began to wonder if maybe titles mattered after all. The rehearsal dinner was that evening, but I did not go. Instead, I drove home, hung my jacket on the chair, and listened to the house breathe. Every tick of the watch felt louder, almost impatient. Maybe it was trying to tell me something, that silence can be the first sign of goodbye. I thought that silence was just nerves. I did not know it was a decision. The morning of the wedding began with quiet optimism. I woke early, brewed fresh coffee, and laid my suit out carefully on the bed. The silver watch sat beside it, polished, ticking softly like it was counting down to something I could not yet name. The air was cool that day, the kind of autumn stillness that makes you believe peace is possible. I packed the bouquet myself, white lilies, Emily's favorite, and drove to the venue with the window half open, the wind carrying the faint scent of rain and pine. When I arrived, people were already gathering outside. Laughter, camera shutters, perfume, the hum of celebration filled the air. I nodded politely at guests who recognized me from old photos. Some smiled warmly, others not at all. Lily was radiant. She stood near the archway draped in flowers, her dress shimmering like morning light. For a moment, pride drowned everything else. That was my little girl. the one I taught to ride a bike, to tie her shoes, to believe she could be anything. She approached me briefly before the ceremony. "Hi," she said softly, smoothing her veil. "Hi," I replied, smiling. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." She hesitated at the word sweetheart, but said thank you. Then she glanced toward her future in-laws who were watching us. Her expression shifted, polite distance again. "Could you hand these to the florist?" she asked, passing me a few envelopes. No eye contact. No warmth. I nodded, took them, and walked away. The ceremony began soon after. I sat in the third row beside an empty seat labeled reserved. I tried not to think about who it was reserved for, the man who left before she could form her first memory. When the music started, she walked down the aisle alone, just as she had planned. The crowd whispered approval, modern, independent, strong. But to me, each step sounded like a door closing. Then came the speeches. One by one, friends and family stood, glasses in hand, voices full of laughter and stories. When it was her turn, she stood before the microphone, eyes glistening, smiling wide. "I want to thank everyone who came today," she began, "especially my real family for always supporting me." The word real hung in the air like thunder. She paused, scanning the crowd. Then she said it, the sentence that cracked something sacred inside me. And of course I wish my real dad could have been here to see this. The room fell silent. I felt 300 heads turn toward me. Curious, confused, some whispering. I did not move. My fingers tightened around the bouquet I had brought her, the lilies trembling slightly. She continued speaking, her voice steady, as if nothing had happened. As if she had not just rewritten 24 years of love into a single public erasure. When she finished, applause filled the hall, polite but uneasy. Cameras flashed. I stood slowly, left the bouquet on the table beside her untouched glass, and walked toward the exit. Outside, the evening air felt colder than it should have. The sun was sinking, gold bleeding into grey. I reached into my pocket, pulled out Emily's watch and stared at it under the fading light. The ticking was calm, indifferent even. I thought about the first time Lily called me Dad. She had been 4, sitting on the kitchen floor playing with wooden blocks. She looked up and said, "Thank you, Daddy," like it was the most natural word in the world. I remembered how I had to step outside afterward just to breathe. Now that same word, that same bond, was gone, not by accident, but by choice. I got into my truck, turned the key, and sat without starting it. Inside, the bouquet lay on the passenger seat. I touched the petals once, then left them there. I drove away before the music ended, headlights cutting through the dusk. I did not look back. Later that night, I placed the silver watch on the kitchen table beside her empty thank you card, the one she had meant to sign but never did. The ticking echoed in the still room like a metronome marking the end of something precious. That was the moment I realized love can die quietly, without shouting, without warning, just silence. That was the last time I ever called her my daughter, at least aloud. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up in a stranger's life. The house was still but not peaceful, the kind of silence that hums after a storm. The bouquet I had brought for her lay wilted on the counter, the petals browning at the edges. The silver watch ticked beside it, patient as ever. Time, it seemed, had no sympathy. By mid-morning, my phone began to buzz. Messages, calls, and a few links from friends. One of them read, "John, is this you?" "It's all over Facebook." I opened it. There it was, in a video from the wedding. The clip showed her standing on stage, the microphone glinting, her voice steady. "You're not my real dad." Someone had added captions, bold and cruel. Within hours, it had thousands of views. The comments were worse. Strangers debating my life, my worth, my love for her, as if they had all been there for those 24 years. Some pitied me, some mocked me. And some said what hurt most of all. He should have known. Blood is blood, I did not reply. I just set the phone down and went out to the porch. The morning light was sharp, too honest. A few neighbors passed by. They smiled awkwardly, eyes full of that mix of sympathy and curiosity people have when they think they've witnessed tragedy. "Hang in there, John," one of them said softly. "Kids, they change." I nodded because that was easier than speaking. Inside, I tried to lose myself in routine, fixed a loose cabinet, cleaned the gutters, made lunch. But every sound felt hollow. The spoon clinking against the plate, the hum of the refrigerator. Even the clock seemed ashamed to tick. That afternoon an email arrived. It was from the wedding coordinator, an invoice labeled outstanding balance $14,200. Under payer, my name had been replaced by hers, and then crossed out with mine handwritten beside it. The message was simple. As per agreement, please remit payment within 7 days. Agreement. I never signed one. I called her number, but she did not answer. I tried again that evening. Straight to voicemail. By nightfall, I received a text from her fiancé's number. Please stop contacting Lily. She needs space. We'll handle the remaining bills when we can. We'll handle. The watch ticked on the table, louder now, its rhythm almost accusing. Later that night, my best friend Mark stopped by. We had known each other since college. He brought 2 beers, set them down quietly, and just sat with me. After a long silence, he said, "You don't have to prove anything, John. People will forget about this." I smiled faintly. "I won't," he nodded. "Then maybe you should let it go." "Letting go is easy when you've got nothing to remember," I said. "I remember too much." He left before midnight. The house felt even emptier when the door closed. I went to my room, opened the small wooden box on my dresser, Emily's jewelry box, and placed the silver watch inside. The ticking softened under the lid like a heart buried under earth. Days passed. The call stopped. The world moved on, but my world stayed paused. I spent my mornings walking by the lake, evenings sitting on the porch, trying to understand how 24 years could disappear with a sentence. Then one afternoon a small package arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was the silver watch, wrapped neatly, cleaned, polished, no note. Just the watch, returned like an unwanted gift. I turned it over in my hand. The engraving E&J always on time caught the light. Maybe that was the lesson. Love had its timing and mine had run out. That night I wound the watch once out of habit. It ticked faintly, a whisper in the dark. If love was a debt, I murmured, I suppose mine was overdue. I set the watch down and switched off the lamp. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that feels like someone has walked out and taken the air with them. And that was when the thought first came, quiet, almost afraid of itself. If they could erase me with a lie, maybe truth could bring me back. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up in a stranger's life. The house was still but not peaceful, the kind of silence that hums after a storm. The bouquet I had brought for her lay wilted on the counter, the petals browning at the edges. The silver watch ticked beside it, patient as ever. Time, it seemed, had no sympathy. By mid-morning, my phone began to buzz. Messages, calls, and a few links from friends. One of them read, "John, is this you?" "It's all over Facebook." I opened it. There it was, a video from the wedding. The clip showed her standing on stage, the microphone glinting, her voice steady. "You're not my real dad." Someone had added captions, bold and cruel. Within hours it had thousands of views. The comments were worse. Strangers debating my life, my worth, my love for her, as if they had all been there for those 24 years. Some pitied me, some mocked me, and some said what hurt most of all, he should have known. Blood is blood, I did not reply. I just set the phone down and went out to the porch. The morning light was sharp, too honest. A few neighbors passed by. They smiled awkwardly, eyes full of that mix of sympathy and curiosity people have when they think they've witnessed tragedy. "Hang in there, John," one of them said softly. "Kids, why they change?" I nodded because that was easier than speaking. Inside, I tried to lose myself in routine, fixed a loose cabinet, cleaned the gutters, made lunch. But every sound felt hollow. The spoon clinking against the plate, the hum of the refrigerator. Even the clock seemed ashamed to tick. That afternoon, an email arrived. It was from the wedding coordinator, an invoice labeled outstanding balance $14,200. Under payer, my name had been replaced by hers and then crossed out with mine, handwritten beside it. The message was simple. As per agreement, please remit payment within 7 days. Agreement. I never signed one. I called her number, but she did not answer. I tried again that evening. Straight to voicemail. By nightfall, I received a text from her fiancé's number. "Please stop contacting Lily. She needs space." "We'll handle the remaining bills when we can." "We'll handle." The watch ticked on the table, louder now, its rhythm almost accusing. Later that night, my best friend Mark stopped by. We had known each other since college. He brought 2 beers, set them down quietly, and just sat with me. After a long silence, he said, "You don't have to prove anything, John. People will forget about this." I smiled faintly. "I won't," he nodded. "Then maybe you should let it go." "Letting go is easy when you've got nothing to remember," I said. "I remember too much." He left before midnight. The house felt even emptier when the door closed. I went to my room, opened the small wooden box on my dresser, Emily's jewelry box, and placed the silver watch inside. The ticking softened under the lid like a heart buried under earth. Days passed. The call stopped. The world moved on, but my world stayed paused. I spent my mornings walking by the lake, evenings sitting on the porch, trying to understand how 24 years could disappear with a sentence. Then, one afternoon, a small package arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was the silver watch. Wrapped neatly, cleaned, polished, no note. Just the watch and returned like an unwanted gift. I turned it over in my hand. The engraving E&J always on time caught the light. Maybe that was the lesson. Love had its timing and mine had run out. That night I wound the watch once out of habit. It ticked faintly, a whisper in the dark. If love was a debt, I murmured, I suppose mine was overdue. I set the watch down and switched off the lamp. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that feels like someone has walked out and taken the air with them. And that was when the thought first came. Quiet. Almost afraid of itself. If they could erase me with a lie, maybe truth could bring me back. The days after that letter came were quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that does not heal and it haunts. I stopped answering calls. Even the radio stayed off. I worked in the yard, fixed things that did not need fixing, and pretended that repairing broken wood could repair broken trust. At night, I would sit by the window with a cup of coffee that went cold before I ever drank it. The porch light across the street flickered, the same way it had for years, but for the first time, I found myself staring at it as though it was trying to tell me something about endurance. People in town began to whisper. I could feel it at the grocery store, at the diner, even at church. They did not mean harm. Pity just has a smell to it. Soft, polite, but heavy. "Poor man," someone said once behind me at the register. "Raised her all that time, and she—" The sentence never finished. But it did not need to. I stopped going out after that. Then one Thursday, while sorting through a stack of unpaid bills, I noticed something strange. A withdrawal I did not recognize. My name appeared on a transaction for $18,000, transferred 3 weeks before the wedding. It was labeled as a loan payment for a company I had never heard of. I called the bank. The clerk's tone turned cautious. "Mr. Anders, according to our records, this was an authorized withdrawal. The joint account holder signed off." "Joint account holder?" I asked. "Yes, sir. Miss Lily Anders." My hand went cold. "She's not on that account. She was added in April," the clerk replied. "We have the paperwork." I asked for a copy. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. Inside were the documents, my signature forged neatly beside hers. Whoever did it knew how to make it look real. That night I sat in my workshop staring at the papers. The smell of sawdust and old varnish filled the air. On the wall hung photographs. Lily at 5, missing her front teeth. Lily at 12, standing beside a school project. Lily at 17, wearing her cap and gown. Every photo told me I had given her everything. But those signatures told me someone had taken something from me. Maybe her, maybe him, maybe both. I reached for the small wooden frame sitting on the shelf. Inside it was a photo from years ago. Emily holding Lily at the lake, both smiling, sunlight dancing off the water. The glass was cracked in one corner. I had meant to fix it for months. That night I finally did. As I slid the repaired glass back into the frame, I realized something. I had spent my life fixing what others broke, fences, toys, hearts, always believing that love was repairable. But now I saw it differently. Love is not something you fix. It is something you defend. So I made a decision. Not out of anger, but clarity. I gathered every document, every receipt, every statement that had her name, his name, or mine. I placed them all in a folder and locked it in the drawer under the workbench. The next morning I called a lawyer. I told him everything. He listened quietly and said, "Bring the papers. Let's start with the truth." After the call, I opened the drawer again and took out the silver watch. It had stopped ticking during the night. Maybe the spring had wound too tight. Maybe time itself was tired. I wound it gently, slow and careful, until I heard that small click, the sound of something waking up again. That evening, I wrote one line in my notebook, the first line of a plan. They wanted to erase me from the story. So I began writing a new one, on paper this time. Outside, the wind brushed against the porch like it was applauding the idea. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without bitterness and only purpose. They thought silence meant defeat. They did not know what I could build out of quiet. That Monday, the air smelled of rain and new beginnings. I drove to the lawyer's office with a manila folder on the passenger seat, the silver watch ticking quietly in my jacket pocket. The rhythm felt steadier now, almost approving, like Emily's way of saying, "Go on." The office sat on the corner of Main and Willow, small but clean, the kind of place where truth still had a paper trail. My lawyer, Mr. Grayson, was an old friend of Mark's. Calm voice, wire-rimmed glasses, and eyes that measured silence better than most people measured words. He greeted me with a firm handshake. "You've had a rough few weeks," he said softly. "I have had quieter storms," I replied. He smiled faintly. "Then let's weather this one properly." I laid the documents on his desk. Bank statements, the forged withdrawal, copies of the wedding invoices. He examined them slowly, nodding. "This signature," he said, pointing at the loan form. "It is not yours." "No," I said. "But it is meant to be." He leaned back in his chair. "Do you know, forgery of this kind ties to federal fraud if the funds cross state lines. That company, does the name Everline Ventures mean anything to you?" "It does now," I said. He clicked through a few public records. The name appeared again and again, listed under her fiancé's address, not hers. A small business loan approved weeks before the wedding. My signature apparently had guaranteed it. Grayson took off his glasses. "You could press charges." "You have every right." I nodded but stayed quiet. Pressing charges was not what I wanted. Truth was, that night back home I sat at the kitchen table with the watch beside my coffee cup. Its ticking was steady, patient, like an old friend reminding me that timing mattered more than anger. I opened my laptop and began tracing every digital breadcrumb, email notifications, bank messages, shared folders. It took hours, but eventually I found it. A PDF sent from her fiancé's address to hers, 2 days before the loan cleared. The subject line read, "All set. He will never know." The words landed like cold iron. I printed everything, placed it neatly in a second folder labeled Truth, and tucked it away. Over the next week, I moved quietly. No shouting, no confrontation, just planning. I transferred my remaining savings into a separate account, cancelled automatic payments linked to their names, and updated the ownership papers for my home and truck. I was not preparing for revenge. I was preparing for peace. When the bank called to confirm the fraud complaint, I requested confidentiality. I wanted this to unfold quietly, properly. 2 days later, I met with Grayson again. "We'll freeze the account under investigation," he said. "It will cause ripples, but the truth will reach her before the world does." I nodded, watching the sunlight catch the face of the silver watch as it lay on his desk. The second hand moved gracefully, a reminder that justice does not rush. It arrives when you have earned patience. That evening I drove by Lily's house. I did not stop. The lights were on, silhouettes moving behind curtains, laughter maybe, or the illusion of it. I parked across the street for a moment, remembering her as a child running through sprinklers in our backyard, water glistening like diamonds in her hair. Then I drove home, parked the truck, and sat in silence. I realized something important that night. Betrayal does not destroy love. It clarifies it. It separates what was real from what was borrowed. The next morning I received an email from Grayson. The subject line read, "Case filed." Investigation opened. Attached was a scanned copy of the evidence report. My name cleared, her fiancé listed as the primary suspect. I looked out the window toward the backyard where the maple trees swayed. For the first time in months, the air felt light. I wound the silver watch once more, feeling the spring catch and hum beneath my fingers. I did not need revenge, I said aloud. I only needed the truth to speak loud enough to echo, and as the ticking filled the room, I could almost hear Emily's voice in it, steady, forgiving, proud. But the echo had not reached Lily yet. Not yet. 3 days after the investigation opened, the world around me carried on as usual, but I was no longer part of it. I moved differently now. Quiet, deliberate. Every step had a purpose. On Wednesday morning, the bank official called to confirm that the accounts tied to Everline Ventures had been frozen pending inquiry. Her tone was polite, careful. "Mr. Anders," she said, "this will affect ongoing payments, including those connected to the wedding expenses." "I understand," I replied. The truth usually does that same day. I mailed out a small envelope. No return address, no letterhead, just a stack of copied documents and a note written in black ink. "You forgot whose name paid for your dream." I addressed it to Lily. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and listened to the cicadas hum in the distance. The air was heavy with August heat, but my heart felt strangely calm. I was not angry anymore, just focused. I did not know what time she opened the envelope, but I imagined her hands shaking when she saw the forged papers, the email printouts, the bank reports. I imagined the silence that would follow, the same silence I had lived with for months, except now it was hers to carry. By Friday, whispers began to move through town. Someone at the bank must have talked. People started mentioning her fiancé's name in half sentences at the diner, at church, at the local hardware store. "Did you hear about that young man, the one from the Anders wedding? Something about fraud." Poor girl, her father tried to warn her, I bet. I never corrected them. I just listened. Let the truth take its time. On Saturday afternoon, Mark dropped by. He had that look, half curiosity, half concern. "I heard things are getting messy for them," he said. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" I smiled faintly. Mess has a way of cleaning itself when you stop standing in it. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You always did play the long game, John." When he left, the sun was setting. The light fell across the yard in long gold stripes, the same color as the lilies I once brought to her wedding. I noticed something strange then. I did not hate those flowers anymore. They were just flowers again. That night I took out Emily's silver watch. The face caught the dim light, steady as a heartbeat. I wound it slowly and said aloud, "We are on time, Em. Right on time." 2 days later, I came home from the store to find a car parked in my driveway. Lily's car. She was sitting on the porch steps, head in her hands, her wedding ring missing. The moment I stepped out, she stood, her eyes red but proud. "Dad," she began, then stopped. "John." I said nothing, only waited. She took a breath. "I got your package." I nodded. "He said it was just business, that you'd understand. But I saw the emails. I saw what he did." Her voice broke, but she steadied it quickly. "You reported him, didn't you?" "I reported the truth," I said. "The truth does not pick sides." Tears filled her eyes. "He's lost everything and everyone's talking. I do not know what to do." "Then stop running from silence," I said quietly. "Sit with it until you can hear what it has to teach you." For a long time she did not speak. Then she whispered, "I never meant to hurt you." I believed her. But belief does not erase consequence. She left soon after. No hug, no apology. Just the soft click of her car door and the sound of gravel as she drove away. That night I sat where she had been, on the same step, under the same porch light. I looked down at the watch in my hand. The ticking was steady, almost louder now, as if time itself had found its rhythm again. Somewhere in town, rumors were spreading. Her husband's business partners were pulling out, investors backing away. I did not celebrate it. Justice is not a party, and it is a correction. Still, I allowed myself one quiet smile, because for the first time since that wedding, silence no longer belonged to shame. It belonged to peace. 2 days later, she showed up at my door, without her ring. The morning of the rehearsal that Sunday morning, I woke to rain. Not the heavy kind that crashes against the windows, the soft kind that sounds like forgiveness tapping on the roof. When I walked out to the porch, Lily's car was there again. She sat behind the wheel for a long time before stepping out. Her eyes looked tired, her hair pulled back like she had not slept. She stood there in the drizzle, not moving closer, just watching me. "You're up early," I said, my voice calm but cautious. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "Everyone's talking." I nodded slowly. "About him?" She swallowed hard. "About us." The air between us was thick with everything we had not said. She stepped closer, her voice trembling but proud. "You ruined him, Dad." The word Dad landed like a pebble in a quiet pond. It rippled through me, familiar, fragile, and dangerous. I met her eyes. "No," I said. "He ruined himself." The truth just found its way home. Her gaze fell to the porch floor. "The papers say he could face jail time." "I know," I said. "And I know you were trying to protect him." She shook her head, tears forming. "I thought I was protecting us. I thought if I proved I didn't need you, if I showed them that I could stand on my own, maybe they'd stop calling me lucky." There it was, the wound behind the wound. All those years she had been chasing legitimacy, not love. And in that chase, she had trampled the one person who never questioned her worth. "I was never your obstacle, Lily," I said softly. "I was your shelter." Her breath caught and she wiped at her face. "I didn't mean what I said that day. At the wedding. I just wanted to sound strong." "You did," I replied. "Strong enough to break something that took a lifetime to build." She winced. The rain thickened, soaking her shoulders, but she didn't seem to notice. Inside, the silver watch ticked on the table beside my coffee mug. I could hear it even from the porch. Each tick sounded like a choice. Stay angry or stay human. "People won't talk forever," I said after a moment. "They'll move on to another story." "Not this time," she whispered. "They're saying I helped him." That I knew. I studied her face. The guilt there was real, raw. "Did you?" Her silence was answer enough. "I signed a few forms," she admitted quietly. "He said it was just paperwork for the business. He told me it would make me part of it, make us equal." I didn't read them. "Equal," I murmured. "That's the word con men love most." Her eyes welled again. "I didn't see it until it was too late," I nodded. "We rarely do. But seeing late is still seeing." She looked around as if expecting Emily to walk out and soften the edges. When she realized no one else was coming, she whispered, "What do I do now?" "Start with the truth," I said. "Tell the police everything. Tell them what you signed, what you didn't. Do not hide behind him anymore." "And you?" she asked. "Will you help me?" I took a slow breath. "I will not hide you," I said. "But help comes after honesty." She nodded weakly, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to make you proud." I looked out over the rain-soaked yard. "You could never make me stop being proud," I said. "But you could make it harder for me to show it." That made her cry. Not loud, but quiet, the way children do when they finally stop defending themselves. After a while, she sat beside me on the porch step. We didn't speak. The rain did that for us, washing away the noise, leaving only the sound of time. When she finally stood to leave, she hesitated. "I don't know if I can fix this," she said. I looked at her, my daughter, my stranger, my heartbreakers, and said, "The only things that stay broken are the ones we stop touching." She left without another word. That night, I placed the silver watch back into its box and locked it away. Not out of anger, out of patience. I needed to let her face what was coming, because love without consequence becomes permission. The next morning, the local paper headline read, "Business owner under investigation for forged documents, spouse cooperating." For the first time, her name and mine appeared together again, not as enemies but as truth-tellers, but forgiveness. That would have to wait until she faced what came next. News travels fast in small towns. By midweek, the whispers that once mocked me had turned into murmurs of apology. The story had broken wide. Local papers, social media, even the evening news. Small-town business owner charged with fraud. Stepfather identified as victim. For the first time in months, my name wasn't followed by pity. It was followed by respect. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence after thunder. I spent that morning on the porch watching the mail truck crawl past the maple trees. The silver watch ticked on my wrist, the same rhythm Emily used to hum when she was thinking. I wondered what she'd say now. Probably something gentle like, "Don't let pride ruin your peace." The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Mr. Anders?" The voice was formal. "This is Detective Reynolds from the Financial Crimes Division. The case has moved forward. Your daughter has been fully cooperative." I closed my eyes. "How bad will it get for her?" "She won't be charged." Her statements matched the evidence. "We believe she didn't know the extent of the forgery. Her husband, however, is another story." I thanked him, hung up, and sat in the quiet. Relief came first, then something deeper. Sorrow, maybe, for how truth always demands a price, even from the innocent. Later that afternoon, I went to the hardware store for nails and paint. The owner, Mr. Daly, looked up from the counter. "John," he said, clearing his throat, "heard about everything. I just want to say we were wrong. All of us." I nodded. "No harm done." "No," he said, shaking his head. "Harm was done. You just handled it like a man should." I didn't respond. I just paid for my things and left. Humiliation fades fast when people need a hero. But I wasn't a hero. I was a father who refused to stay erased. By evening, the neighborhood felt different. Neighbors waved again. Strangers smiled in sympathy. It was strange how quickly judgment turns to grace when headlines change sides. Lily called that night. The first time since the confrontation on the porch. Her voice was small. "They're saying everything about him now. His parents lost their house. His investors are suing." "I know," I said. "I keep replaying it all, the things I said, the wedding." Her voice cracked. "Dad, I don't know how to face anyone." "You don't have to face anyone," I said. "Just face yourself. The world will catch up later." There was a long silence. Then she whispered, "You still call me Lily?" "I always did." I could hear her crying softly on the other end. I didn't fill the silence. Sometimes love is just staying quiet long enough for guilt to turn into truth. 2 days later, the local paper ran another headline. "Forgery victim declines financial restitution." The journalist had called earlier, asking if I wanted to comment. I told her, "Some debts can't be paid in money." That quote made the front page. People started sending letters, kind words, apologies, even church invitations. But none of it mattered. What mattered was that Lily finally stopped hiding. On Friday afternoon, she came to see me again. Her hands trembled as she held a folded copy of the newspaper. "I told them the truth," she said. "Everything." "I know," I replied. "I read it." Her eyes filled again. "They asked me if I wanted to press charges. I told them no. I just wanted to make things right with you." I looked at her, this grown woman who had once needed me to tie her shoes, and I realized something painful but necessary. The distance between us wasn't built overnight, and it wouldn't vanish in one apology. I smiled gently. "Truth is a start, Lily, but it isn't the end." She nodded, understanding more in silence than she ever did in words. When she left, I sat on the porch and looked down at the silver watch. The light caught its face, warm and steady. For the first time in a long time, I wound it without shaking hands. Justice didn't roar that week, and it whispered. And its whisper was enough. The next time we stood in public together, it was not at a wedding, but in court. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper, old wood, and something heavier, truth waiting to be heard. That morning I polished my shoes, put on my grey suit, and slipped the silver watch into my vest pocket. It ticked softly, steadying me like a heartbeat that refused to rush. Lily met me outside the courthouse. She stood under the overhang, pale from nerves. The rain had stopped, but the sky still looked bruised. She gave me a small nod. No hug, no words, just acknowledgement, and for now that was enough. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with quiet conversation. Reporters, attorneys, family members, all gathered to witness the aftermath of deceit. Her husband, Derek, sat at the defense table, his expensive suit unable to hide the fear behind his eyes. When he saw me, he tried to smirk, but it looked more like a grimace. My lawyer, Mr. Grayson, leaned toward me. "You ready?" "I have been ready for 24 years, I said softly. The hearing began. Evidence presented. Documents spread across the table like a story written in ink and arrogance. My forged signature appeared again and again, the same loops and strokes mimicking my hand but missing my heart. Grayson spoke clearly, his voice echoing through the room. My client, Mr. Anders, did not authorize these withdrawals. He trusted the defendant, who exploited both familial and emotional bonds for personal gain. The judge nodded. "Understood. Proceed with Exhibit C." They projected the email chain onto a screen, the one I had found weeks ago. The subject line still burned in my mind. All set. "He'll never know!" Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Derek's attorney objected, but the evidence was too strong. Truth does not need to shout when it has proof. When Lily was called to the stand, she hesitated before walking forward. Her heels echoed like slow confessions. She raised her right hand, voice trembling as she swore to tell the truth. Grayson's tone softened for her. "Miss Anders, when did you realize the documents were fraudulent?" She looked down. After the wedding, after I saw the bank notice. And your father, did he ever confront you about it? No, she said, her voice small. He never yelled. He never blamed me. He just showed me what I needed to see. Grayson nodded. And now, Miss Anders, what do you want this court to understand about your father? Tears welled in her eyes. That he is my real dad. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that matters. The room went silent. Even the judge's pen paused. Derek looked away. For the first time, shame found him. The trial continued, but I barely heard it. My mind was somewhere else. With Emily, with that little girl in pigtails running barefoot through our yard. With every bedtime story and scraped knee that had brought us here. When the judge finally spoke, her tone was firm. Based on the presented evidence, the court finds the defendant guilty of fraud and forgery. Sentencing will follow. Derek's head dropped. The sound of his lawyer whispering something desperate was lost in the shuffle of papers. As people began to stand, Lily turned toward me. Our eyes met, hers full of tears, mine full of quiet restraint. She took one step forward, then stopped, unsure. I gave her a small nod. No words, no grand gestures. Just permission to forgive herself, not me. Outside the courthouse, reporters called my name. Microphones flashed like lightning. Mr. Anders, do you have a comment? I shook my head. No, some truths do not need repeating. I walked down the courthouse steps into the cool air. The world felt heavy but lighter somehow. Justice has a weight. And that day I finally set it down. Lily followed a few paces behind. When we reached the bottom, she whispered, I didn't deserve your patience. I looked at her. You didn't earn my love either. You just had it. The silver watch ticked in my pocket, steady, alive, as though it had waited all this time for that sentence. We stood there in silence, neither of us knowing what came next. The verdict would end his career, but hers was only beginning to crumble. When the verdict came down, the world moved fast, too fast for the people who had built their lives on borrowed time. By Friday, the news was everywhere. Derek's conviction, the revoked business license, the frozen assets. The town that once admired his ambition now treated his name like a warning. I watched it unfold quietly. No celebration, no satisfaction. Justice, when real, does not need applause. That week I began receiving letters from his former investors. Most of them polite, some threatening legal action, not against me but against him. I forwarded them all to Grayson. He handled the noise while I repaired my fence, sanded the porch railings, and returned to the rhythm of ordinary life. One morning, while refilling my coffee, I noticed an envelope on the doormat. Lily's handwriting. Inside was a single note. Dad, I do not know where to start. The world feels heavier than I imagined. Everyone keeps asking me how I could not see it. The lies, the forged papers, the debts. I do not know what to tell them. Maybe that love makes you blind in the most beautiful and the most dangerous ways. I hope one day I can make it right. Love, Lily. The handwriting shook in places. Like every letter was carrying guilt it could barely hold. I placed the note beside the silver watch on the table. Both gleamed under the morning light. One a symbol of time kept, the other of time lost. By midweek, Derek's parents put their house up for sale. The gossip spread quickly, and pity replaced pride in every whisper. At the grocery store, people avoided Lily, some out of shame, others out of judgment disguised as concern. I heard she started working at the library. Quiet work for a quieter life. I drove by once, saw her through the window stacking books, her face calm but distant. She did not see me. I did not go in. Some reconciliations take more courage than proximity allows. Then came the settlement letter. The court awarded damages, reimbursement for the stolen funds and defamation, a sum large enough to rebuild, maybe even retire early. I stared at it for a long while. Then I folded it neatly, walked down to the community bank, and signed half of it over to a local scholarship fund under Emily's name. When the clerk asked, "Are you sure you don't want this in your own name, Mr. Anders?" I smiled faintly. It already is. She was my legacy. That evening I took the silver watch from its box, cleaned it with a cloth and wound it carefully. The soft ticking filled the kitchen like the sound of forgiveness arriving late but steady. I sat down and wrote a short letter. Not to Lily, not to the bank, but to Emily. We made it through. She fell, but she's trying to stand. I did not lose her. Just misplaced her for a while. After sealing it, I placed the letter in the drawer beside the watch. The next day, Lily called. Her voice was clearer than I remembered. "Dad," she said, "I heard about the donation. Why did you do that?" "Because your mother believed education could change any story," I said. "And because I didn't need the money. I needed peace." She went quiet. Then softly, "You could have used it for yourself." "I already did," I replied. There was a pause. Then she whispered, "I want to come home." I hesitated, not because I didn't want her to, but because I wanted her to mean it. "This is still your home, Lily," I said finally. "But come back when you're ready to live in it, not just visit your guilt." She cried then, the kind of tears that cleanse more than they wound. When the call ended, I walked outside. The sky was wide and gold, the same shade it had been the evening Emily passed. The wind rustled through the maples, carrying a kind of closure I hadn't known I needed. I looked down at the silver watch. Its ticking was strong again, reliable. "She still needs to learn," I murmured, "but she's on her way." That night, I left the porch light on for the first time in months, a quiet signal to the world and to her. That night, she called again, this time not to defend herself, but to ask if she could come home. The day she came home, the air smelled like spring again, that soft sweetness after rain, the kind that makes old paint look new. I was out in the yard fixing the fence when I heard her car pull up. The sound of gravel under tires, familiar, nervous. She stepped out slowly, holding a small suitcase and a folded envelope in her hands. She looked different. Not weaker, just emptied. The pride that used to guard her every word was gone. What stood in its place was something quieter. Humility. "Hi, Dad," she said. The word landed softer this time, not borrowed, not forced. Just real. "Hey, kid," I said, resting the hammer on the fence post. She smiled faintly, eyes wet. "You're still fixing things." "Some things need more than one try," I replied. We stood in silence for a while. Birds chattered in the distance, the wind tugging at her hair the way it used to when she was little. Finally, she took a deep breath and held out the envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "It's the loan reimbursement," she said. "Part of the settlement. I want you to have it." I shook my head. "That money's dirty. Let it stay where it belongs," in the past. Tears filled her eyes. "Then what can I do to make it right?" "Live better," I said. "That's all I ever wanted from you." We walked to the porch. I poured her a cup of coffee, the same chipped mug she used to sneak sips from as a teenager. She laughed softly when she saw it. "Still can't throw this old thing away, huh?" I smiled. "It's got too many stories in it." She stared into the cup for a long time before whispering, "I miss her." "Me too," I said. "Every day." Then softer, she asked, "What would Mom think of me now?" I looked out across the yard, the wind brushing through the maple leaves like a whisper. "She'd say you're learning, and she'd remind you that the lesson isn't over until you forgive yourself." Her voice broke. "I don't know how. You start small," I said. "One apology, one act of kindness, one honest day at a time. Guilt fades when you start doing good on purpose." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something, a photo. It was the one of us at the lake, the same picture I had framed years ago. The glass was gone, edges frayed. "I found this in the attic," she said. "I thought I'd lost it." I took it from her carefully. "You can't lose what's made of memory." We sat there together, two halves of a story trying to find their middle again. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was healing. After a while she asked, "Do you ever wish you hadn't raised me? That you just walked away when Mom died?" I turned to her, surprised. "Never, not once. Even on the hardest days." "Why?" "Because love doesn't check bloodlines before it chooses who to stay for." She broke down then, real tears, not performative ones. She leaned forward, and I let her rest her head on my shoulder. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. Imperfect, but true. When she finally sat back, her eyes were clearer. "I've been offered some volunteer work," she said. "At the youth center downtown. They're short on hands." I nodded. "Good. Help someone who still has time to learn what you learned too late." She smiled. "You think I can do that?" "I think you're already doing it." The sun began to set behind the trees, painting the yard in amber light. I could hear the steady ticking of the silver watch from my pocket. I placed it on the porch railing where the light caught it. She looked at it, then at me. You still carry that thing everywhere. Always, I said. It reminds me that time keeps going, whether we're ready or not. She reached for it but stopped halfway, unsure. I let her hesitation linger. Some things should be earned, not handed over. When the wind picked up, the watch glinted gold in the fading sun. I looked at her and said, "This house doesn't need an apology, Lily. It just needs laughter again." She smiled through her tears. "Then I'll try to bring some back." As she walked inside, the porch light flicked on automatically, a soft golden halo over her shadow. I could forgive her, I thought. But forgiveness does not erase what truth already restored. That autumn came with quiet mornings and slower days. The world outside my window had turned amber, the same color as the watch's ticking light. It was a good season for endings, and for beginnings disguised as repairs. Lily had started working full-time at the youth center. I saw her name in the local paper. Volunteer coordinator brings hope to teens. They didn't mention her past. That was the best kind of mercy. Sometimes she'd stop by after work with groceries, or just sit on the porch while I read the paper. The silence between us had changed. It used to ache, now it breathed. One evening she found an envelope on the kitchen counter, her name handwritten, sealed in blue wax. Inside was a document, the deed to this house. She looked up, startled. "Dad, what is this?" I smiled faintly. "A trust," her brow furrowed. "You're giving me the house?" "Not quite," I said. "I'm giving you a chance to earn it," she blinked. "What do you mean?" "The trust is conditional. You'll inherit the house after 3 years of verified community work. No shortcuts, no loopholes. Until then, it stays under my name." She exhaled slowly. "You don't trust me yet." I shook my head gently. "No, Lily, I'm teaching you to trust yourself. Because forgiveness isn't a gift. It's a responsibility." She stood there silent, her eyes flickering between pride and gratitude. Then she whispered, "You're still teaching me lessons." "Your mother made me promise I'd never stop," I said. That night, she didn't eat much, but she stayed late, sitting across from me while the clock ticked and the watch echoed softly beside it. Sometimes love sounds like that. 2 steady rhythms trying to find the same beat again. The following week, a local reporter stopped by the house. She was writing a follow-up on the trial. I told her I had no comment but offered her a quote instead. One line I'd written the night before. "Love without respect is charity. Family without honesty is theater." The article went viral in town. Quiet virality, the kind that spreads through folded newspapers and murmured agreement at diners. People began to treat me differently again, not with pity this time, but with understanding. Lily read it too. She called the next morning, voice soft. "You wrote that, didn't you?" "I did." "It sounds like Mom." "It's both of us," I said. That evening she came by again, and this time not in guilt, but in peace. She brought homemade soup, still warm. She didn't say much, just placed it on the stove and started setting 2 bowls. We ate quietly, and for the first time in years, the house felt like a home again. Not a museum of what was lost, but a workshop for what could still be built. After dinner, I told her, "There's one more thing." She looked up. I spoke with the bank. "You'll start receiving monthly dividends from the scholarship fund for administration and outreach. That's your mother's legacy now. Keep it alive." Her eyes filled again. "You trust me with that?" "I do," I said. "Because you've learned what money costs when it replaces meaning." She nodded, unable to speak. The air between us held something sacred, a balance restored not by revenge but by reason. Before she left, she noticed the silver watch sitting open on the counter. Its face caught the lamplight, glowing faintly. "You ever going to let me wear that?" she asked, half smiling. "Someday," I said. "When it stops ticking for me." She reached out, touched it gently with one finger and whispered, "It's beautiful." "It's patient," I said. "Like love. Like justice." The night ended quietly. After she left, I stepped onto the porch, the cool wind wrapping around me like closure. I watched her taillights fade down the hill and thought, this is what dignity feels like. Not triumph, just peace that finally stops running. Inside, the silver watch ticked on, not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I'd rebuilt. She did not ask for the watch that night, and I did not offer it. Not yet. Winter came early that year. The mornings turned silver, the fields stiff with frost, and the air outside sharp enough to make breath visible. Time had a way of slowing down when the world went quiet. I was stacking firewood behind the shed when I saw her car pull up again. I hadn't expected her that morning, but something in the way she stepped out told me this wasn't just a visit. Her movements were hesitant, her shoulders drawn in, the way people look when they've come to surrender something heavy. "Dad," she said softly, walking toward me. Her voice cracked in the cold air. She looked older than she was, not by years, but by weight. "I need to talk to you." I nodded and gestured toward the porch. We sat there, 2 mugs of coffee steaming between us. The old silver watch ticked faintly on the table, the sound small but steady. The heartbeat of our story still running. "I got offered a position," she said. "Full-time at the youth center. Director role." "That's good news," I said carefully. She hesitated. "It's in another town, about 2 hours away. I wanted to tell you before I accepted." I smiled faintly. "Then tell me." She looked at me with tears already welling. "It feels wrong to leave. After everything I did, after everything you lost." I set my coffee down. "You didn't take my life from me, Lily. You just tested whether it was worth holding on to. Turns out it still is." Her tears fell freely then. "I don't deserve this kindness. No one deserves forgiveness," I said quietly. "It's not earned. It's chosen." She looked down, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to forgive myself." "Then borrow mine," I said. That broke her. She leaned forward, sobbing into her hands. I didn't move. I just let her cry. Some lessons don't need words. When she could finally speak again, she whispered, "I wish I could go back to that wedding. I wish I could take it all back." I stared out at the frost-coated yard. "If you could, we wouldn't be sitting here now. Pain teaches faster than comfort ever could." She nodded slowly, wiping her face. "They called me from the courthouse," she said. "Derek wants to appeal. He says he's sorry." I watched the wind stir through the frozen grass. "He's sorry because he's cold and alone," I said. "Not because he understands," she sighed. "He asked me to write a statement, to say he was misled too. And will you?" She looked at me with wide, desperate eyes. "I don't know. I want to move on, but I feel guilty leaving him to rot." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Sometimes compassion is letting someone face the wall they built." Her voice was barely a whisper. "But what if forgiveness means helping him?" "Forgiveness doesn't always mean rescue," I said. "It means release. You can wish him peace from a distance." She was quiet for a long time. The wind had calmed, the world around us frozen in a kind of stillness only winter can teach. Finally she said, "I don't know how you keep your peace. I'd break apart if I were you." I smiled gently. "I did break apart, Lily. I just chose to rebuild slower." She laughed through her tears. "You're impossible." "No," I said. "Just practiced." She reached for the silver watch on the table, her fingers brushing it lightly. "You still carry this everywhere." "Always," I said. "It's the only thing that never lied." She looked up. "When you're gone, can I have it?" I studied her face. The question wasn't about possession, it was about belonging. About whether I still saw her as mine. I nodded. "When I'm gone," I said softly, "it's yours. But only if you've learned to listen to its ticking." She frowned gently. "What do you mean?" "The ticking," I said. "It doesn't just tell time. It tells patience. It tells truth. And it tells when it's time to stop looking backward." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "I'll try to remember that." I stood then, pulled her into a slow, steady hug, the kind that isn't about emotion, but about recognition. "You don't need to beg anymore," I whispered. "You already came home." She stayed there, holding on as if the silence itself could heal. When she finally stepped back, the light caught her tears, turning them to something almost beautiful. "Thank you," she said. I smiled. "Don't thank me. Live better than before. That'll be thanks enough." She left soon after, but this time her shoulders were lighter. Inside, the watch ticked on, patient, forgiving, still teaching. She hadn't earned the watch yet, but for the first time, I knew she would. Spring came quietly that year, no fanfare, no grand renewal. Just sunlight sneaking through the curtains earlier each morning, soft enough to wake the heart without startling it. The maple trees were full again, their leaves trembling with that fragile green that only appears for a few weeks before deep summer settles in. Life was moving forward, and for once I didn't feel the need to chase it. It had been nearly a year since the courtroom, since the confession, since she called me Dad again. Lily still visited most weekends. We rarely spoke about the past, not because we'd forgotten it, but because we had learned to live with it. One Sunday morning, she arrived early with a small box in her hands. "For you," she said, smiling nervously. I opened it. Inside was a new leather strap for the silver watch, dark brown, soft, sturdy. The old one had been frayed for years, the stitching pulling loose at the edges. "I noticed it was wearing out," she said. "Thought it deserved something stronger." I turned the strap over in my fingers. "You picked a good color. Feels like time itself," she smiled. "You taught me to pay attention to details." We replaced the strap together at the kitchen table. I watched her hands work, steady, careful, no longer the nervous movements of someone desperate for approval. When she clicked the buckle into place, she looked up, almost shy. "There," she said softly. "Good as new." I checked the time. The watch ticked smooth and steady. "Not new," I said. "Just wiser." We laughed quietly. Later that afternoon, we drove out to the lake, the same one where Emily used to take her when she was small. The air carried the scent of pine and damp earth, the kind of scent that reminds you memory can be kind. We sat on the old wooden dock, legs dangling above the water. Lily pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag. "I wrote something," she said. She unfolded it with care and began to read. Her voice trembled at first, but grew steadier with each line. "I once believed love was a feeling, soft, fleeting, conditional. But now I know love is the work that happens after disappointment. The courage to stay when the easy choice is to leave. My father taught me that. Not by words, but by silence. By showing up when it would have been easier to walk away. And for that, I'll never call him anything less than what he is. My real dad." When she finished, she looked at me, eyes glistening in the sun. "I was going to read that at the volunteer banquet next month," she said. "But I wanted you to hear it first." For a long time, I couldn't speak. I just stared at her. This woman who had once broken me, now sitting there mending something far more fragile than time. Faith. Finally, I said, "You found your voice." She nodded. "You waited long enough for it." The breeze shifted, carrying ripples across the lake. I reached into my pocket, took out the silver watch and placed it in her hands. Her eyes widened. "Dad, I can't—" "You can," I said, "because you've learned what it measures." She ran her thumb across the engraving. "E and J, always on time. Mom would be proud," she whispered. "She already is," I said. "You brought her piece back with you." She fastened the watch around her wrist. It looked right there, not like a gift, but like something coming home. For a while we sat in silence, the water glinting like glass. The sun slipped lower, painting everything in gold. "I used to think the sound of this watch was just time passing," I said quietly. "Now I think it's something else." "What?" she asked. "Forgiveness," I said. "It has the same rhythm, slow, patient, and never forced." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I hear it too." We stayed there until the horizon swallowed the sun. The world had no need for words then, just the steady ticking between us, the echo of love that had outlasted pride. When we finally stood to leave, she turned to look at the lake one last time. "You think she's still here?" she asked softly. I smiled. She never left. As we walked back toward the truck, she glanced down at the watch on her wrist. "You know," she said, "it's still keeping perfect time." "Of course it is," I replied. They'd waited long enough for us to catch up, and as the truck door closed and the engine rumbled to life, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time, at the dock, the lake, the fading sunlight, and whispered, "Always on time. If this story hit home, share it. Someone out there might need to hear that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It redeems it."